we are here to see, well, to watch my experience on migrating an application from Spring into Quarkus. A little bit of the agenda or the contents of about the talk is, first I will introduce myself. Probably you don't know me. And also what can you expect of this presentation? Probably you have, I don't know, high expectancies. Let's lower them down. Then what is Quarkus? Does anybody here don't know anything about Quarkus? Okay. Yeah, exactly. The rest of you are using Quarkus in production, right? No? Okay. Why migrating from Spring? Well, whatever, from anything. Okay, I had thousands of things to do at home, especially if you ask my wife. So why I decided to migrate an application? Then the migration steps. So if you want to just know how to migrate an application, these are a few steps that you have to do. And then I will show you a performance comparative, just showing which are let's say the three options. And these are numbers that you have to consider. Well, there's no deep level of performance here or metrics here. It's just simply a performance metrics on my laptop, considering the context of my laptop, right? But this is something that can lead you to have a conclusion. Then my summary. So what is my conclusion about this? And as I expect that you will continue with this journey, I will give you some references that for sure can help you on improving on your knowledge about Quarkus if you decide to migrate. Well, I'm one of the JAG leaders in the Barcelona JAG, Spain. Also, I co-organize the biggest Java conference in Spain, JVCN Conf. Everybody of you have known about this conference? No? No one? Okay, you already know. Also, I work as a software engineer at Red Hat in the modernization and migration application teams. And I'm trying to learn how to play guitar. So for anybody that is interested, and that's my daughter. That's my Twitter handle. Please follow me and ask me questions if you want to go further. What can you expect of this presentation? Well, it's easy. It's only my opinion, my experience. So this is not the way, it's one of the ways. I'm not here to teach you anything. So you have to teach yourself about what you hear here and what you hear outside. This is something that works, so you run it and works. That's it, okay? Don't go any farther of this. And as I said, this is not the way. This is one way, my experience. I didn't know anything about Quarkus before joining this trip. So this is my experience from zero knowledge, right? These are the versions 2.1.5 and 1.2.0 from Quarkus. Almost the last one. Okay, so Quarkus brief description for those that do not know anything about Quarkus. So it's a tech stack that now can be used Scala, Kotlin, and Java. It's mainly focused on Kubernetes, and also that the application that you create can be natively compiled with Graal, but you can also work it or run it on the JVM. And then there are several libraries that you can use with Quarkus. So you could think as Quarkus as something that doesn't, let's say, run. So it's mainly focused on building. And then you will use lots of already standard libraries. So using Quarkus and native compilation, you can go up to 300 times faster. And your artifact can be 10 times smaller. Also, Quarkus is something that has been focused to be very easy to code, okay? Nothing super fancy and complicated to learn. Obviously, it's open source. And one of the interesting things is that every 2 weeks, you have a release. This is for good and for bad. So for good, you will have several improvements, issues solved, and you also will have new extensions. Now we will see what are extensions. And tons of extensions. How many extensions? Well, now there are more than 90. So those are open source libraries that probably you are familiar with. So who is using Spring here? Okay. Who is using Camel? I don't know. Kafka? Keycloak? None? Okay. Well, Flyway, Hibernate. Well, you know all of them. So, and you continue to work with them. So you are not working with Quarkus. You are continuing working with those standard libraries that you are familiar with. This is a timeline about the life of Quarkus. So it's not far from now. So the first release, December of 2018. Now, 2020, we have 1.0. So we can see that in less than, or more than 1 year, but not a lot, we've had one minor version every 2 weeks. So there are several issues solved, several extensions added in only 1 year. But you have to consider also that 1 year means young. This is a bit of comparison between three, ways that you can have your application. In a traditional stack, we all know what does it mean. And also with Quarkus in JVM, and also Quarkus made native with GraalVM. The important thing here is not about the number, it's about the difference. So we are moving from 136 to 12. So we are dividing by 10. So this is awesome on memory consumption. And also on the time that it is used to respond to the first request and the boot time. We are moving from 4.3 seconds to 0.016 seconds. So this is, I'm impressed. Is anybody impressed here about those numbers? Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Quick question on your extension. What happens if you don't have an extension for your library, set of library?
If you don't have a Quarkusite extensions for that library, you can still work on the JVM side, but you cannot go to the GraalVM if your extension or your library is not suitable for being compiled to GraalVM. Okay, so going to GraalVM is not mandatory, but I encourage to do it. But depending on the library that you are using, if it's not made for being compiled natively because it uses reflection, then you cannot go to that way. So this is only just to show the magnitude of the project. In only 1 month, 107 issues were closed, and more than 100 new issues were opened. So they are working so fast. The team that it is behind Quarkus is, well, it's super kind, but also they are helping a lot to the community. So if you find something, well, I have a case of one of my colleagues, not related with Red Hat, that he had an issue with metrics. He opened an issue, and in less than 6 hours, there was a pull request. So it's awesome. It's awesome. Also, we have 3,700 stars. Who does a star in GitHub projects? You. Okay. So we have 3,700 more like you. Okay. So now we are going to see how it is to migrate Spring Pet Clinic to REST to Quarkus. But for that, let me change a bit myself. So this is my experience. I'm no longer Red Hat now. So why I decided to migrate? Just to see if those numbers that I've seen are real or not. So because all of us are always seeing, hello world, wow, this is awesome. But when you go there, it's not that awesome sometimes. So I tried to test it. And the best way to do it is to use a Spring already created application and move it and see which is the result, right? Well, at least this is my way. So, and also because my experience with Spring is that, well, it's super easy to write with Spring. So CDI, REST, whatever, it's super easy. But who is using -d skip tests every time that they build the application using Spring? Don't be shy. Okay, because tests are taking a lot, right? Probably because we are doing wrong some things, rising the context in every test suite. This is my experience. Also, applications are super big. So it's super big application. And also I have this feeling, I have to share it with you. I always have the feeling that something happens behind. There's something like, I don't know, a magic, okay? And you start your application and you see starting histories. And you think, in which moment I said I want histories? Okay, Spring decided that it needs histories. So there are lots of things happening behind. I don't like that. So for Quarkus, what I read is it's easy to develop applications, it's fast, it's lightweight, well, we've seen in the graph before, but not everything is ready. So here the matter is, everything that you need is ready. If so, let's migrate. So this is the description of the project. I don't know if you're familiar with the Spring Pet Clinic, but these are the projects that are inside, or the modules that are inside the project, that's a Spring project. Spring Data, Spring Web with REST, security, documentation for Swagger, actuators, micrometer, CDI, AOP, catch. Okay, so in Quarkus, what I have used? Hibernate Panache, I will explain later. JAX-RS, Quarkus Security, OpenAPI, SmileDry Health is a library, Microprofile Metrics, CDI Spec, and Quarkus Catch that was added recently with Caffeine, but we don't have Spring AOP, just because obvious reasons. If we don't have reflection, we don't have AOP, right? What I didn't migrate, well, this application has 3 implementations layers of the persistence. It has Spring Data, Spring JPA, and Spring JDBC. As it's been quite a long time that I haven't used JDBC directly, I decided not to do it, just to save time. And also, Spring Data, well, I wanted to go to the more common use case, that it is Spring JPA. Who is using JPA? I don't mind Spring or whatever. So most of you are using JPA. And I didn't migrate out JMX just because GraalVM doesn't allow JMX. So let's go to the steps. CDI is the first module that I tried to migrate. And well, it's easy. So the first change is to change AutoWire by inject. In my previous project using Spring, I didn't use AutoWire. I always use inject. So anybody here is still using AutoWire? Okay. So then you have to migrate the interface. And the bin declaration, so well, we had component, we have service. Now we have to use application scope, and we will have a bin. One of the good things in this case is that on the bins, we have auto injection on the constructors if you have only one constructor. So all the arguments in the constructor will be auto injected. And wow, lazy by default. Okay, so you don't have to take care of this laziness. It's already lazy by default. Okay, so the pro things. Well, apparently it's straightforward. I only had to modify the interface. I didn't find any feature missing. But with the Spring, we have one interesting thing. So you can activate bins based on the profile injected on the command line, right? We don't have that. So what we can do is just to do it manually using produces on the CDI. So in this case, you can see that if the profile is whatever, Fast and Furious, then we return the implementation that we want. If it's another thing, we return another implementation. So we are, in fact, returning the bin that we want, but we don't have an annotation for that. And for the injection, all the members have to be at least package private. We cannot have private members in order to be injected. For the JPA repositories, well, we use Panache repository is the common use, but I had to go to Panache repository base just because Panache repository is based on long for the ID class of the entity. And in this project in Spring, it was integer. So I needed to go to base and then define which is the class for the ID, right? Well, we implement this interface and we will have all the find, by, find, well, all the methods, common methods for handling the entities. It's a straightforward migration. It's simply, okay, what it was a repository in Spring, it's only doing the implements, but we don't have query DSL methods. So you have find by name and last name, except for those that are method, that doesn't work. That is, for me, it's not a problem, just because I don't like these kind of methods, that whenever you start doing complex queries, the method signature, well, the method name becomes hard to understand. We don't have a Spring application. Quarkus doesn't have a Spring application. But Quarkus doesn't have main entry classes, but we can have some application classes that we will see later that we will use for defining OpenAPI characteristics. With the Spring REST, we've moved from REST controller, request mapping, get mapping, you see those, to the other JAX-RS annotations. So it's a matter of translating one to the other. In the case of request mapping, well, in the request mapping, you can have the path, the verb, and so on. You need to break down it into the, well, guest, path param, whatever, yeah? Well, as an info, Spring also supports JAX-RS, so you could be using JAX-RS already. With security, in the Spring case, we have pre-authorized, if we are checking for the role. With Quarkus, we are using roles allowed, so it's kind of similar, but with the Spring, we have like a language expression. You can see hash role, blah, blah, blah. And with Quarkus, we have directly the roles that are allowed to enter into the method. So well, in this case, you can do more things with this language expression for the roles that we cannot do with Quarkus. And in this project, the security is persisted into database, and it's using JDBC. For that, we have to use Elytron JDBC extension in Quarkus. We configure in the properties file the query to get the username and the role, and that's it. Fine? Anybody bored? Okay? Yes? Okay. Pros is almost the same result. It's by configuration rather than coding, okay? But Quarkus doesn't have an expression language for checking the roles in the methods, okay? For the CrossOrigin, it's very easy. So it's just only putting this information into the properties file, and that's it. One of the things is that I haven't found a way to do it at controller level. So in this project, in Spring, the CrossOrigin is configured at each controller, and I didn't find a way to do it the same in Quarkus, so I needed to do it globally. So all the controllers are sharing the same CrossOrigin information. About metrics. Well, with metrics, we are using this SmallRye open metrics extension, and we have to annotate every method. So it's counted, time it, we annotate the method, we will have the metrics. But in this case, this project had an aspect that was inspecting all the classes in the packages and getting the metrics for those methods. As we don't have AOP in Quarkus, it's not as easy to do it. So we need to annotate each method, or we can enable Hibernate metrics in the properties. But if you want to measure methods that are out of our scope on editing it, it's not as easy. And also, the metrics that we will get are not exactly the same as the micrometer that Spring is using. But I know that, as I told you before, that guy that was asking for a modification and the pull request was created in 6 hours, already Quarkus team is has worked on adding a toggle in order to generate micrometer compatible metrics. So we already have metrics compatible with the metrics generated by micrometer. Okay? Validation. We come from the controller advice, and we go to an implementation of an exception mapper. More or less, the change is, well, it's not hard to do the change, and the logic behind is more similar, super similar. And we are also based on the valid annotation and the annotations to create the constraints for each field. The only con that I found is that it seems that the Spring in some cases has more MVC features, but well, I didn't miss them in this project. For the Swagger, it's only a matter of adding the extension OpenAPI. You know that OpenAPI is in fact Swagger version 3. So, and if you want to configure this general information for your API, you will create an a class that extends the let's say REST the application. Okay, and you will add all this information. We will have Swagger UI by default in test mode, and if we want to have it in production, it's only a matter of modifying a property. It's easy to do, as you have seen, is very easy. But one thing that the Spring application has is that you can configure which is the scan path in order to Spring to get all the controllers that will be added in your API, in your Swagger YAML. I haven't found a way to do the same with Quarkus. So apparently everything in your application will be put in your API. Okay, if you want to hide some endpoints, I haven't found a way to do it with Quarkus. Probably it is, but I haven't found a way. And AOP for metrics, as I said before, it was very easy with the Spring, and doing an aspect and around all that it is in that package or in that class will be executed, that aspect. We don't have that in Quarkus, so we need to annotate each of the methods, as I said before. For Hibernate, recently we have, as you can see there, this property that enables the metrics for Hibernate. Okay, and you will see all the metrics here collected in the response. With local caching recently, Quarkus added also an extension that will add caffeine in order to catch results of your methods. And then it's very easy also. It's simply adding the annotation catch result, the name of your catch, and that's it. It will catch all the results of that method. And then you configure in the properties the initial capacity and the maximum size for each catch. Okay? I haven't found anything hard or as a conning here. For REST, well, we are in the Spring version, we are using mock MVC, and for Quarkus, we are using rest assured. It's a change of the code that you need to use, but it's more or less the same result in the end. There are some things that have changed. So for instance, the language expression for mock MVC is JSON path in order if you want to check the values returned by the REST endpoint. And with rest assured is, well, Groovy path. It's a bit different, but well, it's more or less the same. And there is other thing that we can, at least I haven't found a way, is that we cannot simulate roles in test mode. So we can inject users, but we cannot inject roles. So if I want to test a method that responds to a admin role, I would need to create a user on the admin role and then inject that user to test that method. With the Spring, you can inject the role. I haven't found another way to do it in Quarkus. About mocking, well, if you want to have a native runnable test, then you can use Quarkus test, and you should mock creating a class that extends the original class in the test hierarchy. I'm using Quarkus test resource to boot a H2 database, then my test will not be native compilable, native runnable. So in fact, I don't care this way of doing the test with Quarkus. And I have to say that, to be honest, I prefer to use Mockito, so I didn't use this way of Quarkus. As I said, if you want to have a database in test, so the project is using Postgre, but the test is using H2. So with this Quarkus test resource, you will have an H2 database to test. Then it will be injected all the properties in your application properties file using the profile at the beginning, and that's it. But this has been a bit boring, right? It's a lot of work to do. Honestly, I don't see this as fancy or cool or let's go to another way. Don't modify anything. Just simply use Spring compatible extensions on Quarkus and don't modify your code. Okay, so we have extensions for Spring Web. You have your file, you have your class, and that's it. You don't modify anything, replace the dependency, and you go. With dependency injection, it's exactly the same. You use this extension, you don't modify your bins. Quarkus will create the code that it is needed on the compilation time, and you will be fine. So if you don't want to modify your mindset, keep using Spring interfaces, and Quarkus will compile it. You have to check every extensions because in some cases there are things that are not totally covered. So if you are not using them, that's fine. Spring data, exactly the same. So you don't have to modify your repositories, your entities, whatever. It's everything done. Simply change the dependency, and that's it. There are, as I said, things that are not covered. So if you have query DSL or query by example executor, then you will not have the same result. Spring Security, the same. And in this time, we have role expression language in the methods. So if you are using a Spring Security, don't modify anything, and that's it. Finally, this is a matrix of the results that I got with my modifications, my migrations. So I thought Spring was generating a bigger file than the rest. That was not the case. So Spring was generating a uberjar of 43 megabytes, the same as Quarkus. GraalVM generates a bigger file, and it takes longer. And also, Quarkus is taking longer than Spring in order to build a file, but because it does a lot of things in compile time, not in runtime. Sure? But here is when the party starts. Boot time in Spring, 8 seconds. Man, this is only an application that has 3 endpoints and connects to a database. 8 seconds. And 634 megabytes in memory. This is a pet clinic, and it takes 600 megabytes. Okay, let's go to Quarkus JVM. 2.7 seconds. Well, it's a bit less, or at least it's 1/3, more or less. But it takes half of the memory. So, well, we have improved. But the important thing here, and this is where I get excited a lot, is that when you go to Graal, and then we are moving from almost 8 seconds to less than half a second to start. Keep in mind that we are connecting to the database and creating all the tables. Half a second. And we are moving from 600 megabytes to only 16. So if you are working on fast, let's say function as a service, lambdas, and you were concerned about using Java for this because it was not meant to do this, now you can change your mind. So, yeah.
This number is the Spring extensions or the regular native?
Sorry, say again?
Spring extensions. Is the number
No, sorry. This is not using a Spring extensions. This is using the regular extensions that I showed before. My next, let's say, project is to do the same with Spring extensions and add here a row saying to see. Yeah, it should at least it should improve probably the time on compilation, but theoretically it shouldn't increase the time on runtime. Yeah.
Spring extensions, do they affect? I mean, does it mean that you can't use GraalVM if you use Spring extensions?
No. Yeah. Spring extensions are totally fine if you use GraalVM. Yeah. Because those Spring extensions, what they are doing is just simply translating those interfaces into the Graal compatible code. So, no, exactly. It's fine. Yeah.
Does the numbers of the memory consumption include both the heap and the regular memory?
It's a simple metric. It's system monitor and see which is the memory consumed there. That's it. No.
The Linux process.
Exactly. This is the Linux process. Yes.
When is recommended to use Quarkus over JVM or Quarkus over native? Where?
Well, Quarkus on native, well, it depends. If you can go native, just simply go native.
For the norm is only always native. Yeah. For the standard.
Yeah.
Is one situation when you use Quarkus JVM or
Well, when you use GraalVM, you are introducing another layer of, let's say, uncertainty. So if you are using JVM, you already know JVM. So if you want to go to be safer from a company perspective, it's the first step is go to the JVM because you are improving a lot also using JVM. And if you want to be, let's say, more risky, you can go just to the GraalVM, and because it's adding another uncertainty onto your project. But if you are willing to take the risk, yes, it's definitely go to the yeah.
Actually, I want to add to that question. I have some of my customers, native mode compiling. You talked about team matrix. You're talking about serverless. That can use cases is working with code because it has a very quick startup time.
Yeah.
You can technically have zero actually bring something up in less than 1 second or even 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Less than half a second. So that gives you an added edge of running these regular microservices as if it's a function of a service.
Yeah.
That would be a use case.
Yeah. I will show some your real. Sorry. Okay. I will show you real use cases of customers from Red Hat doing the migration later on. Okay, so my summary of this migration is that it has been easy. It's easy to code, really. There is a lot of documentation and examples that you can use. There are lots of tutorials over there that you can use also to train yourself. The most important thing is that the Quarkus team community is super kind to help and super fast helping and super, super fast creating new things and adding new extensions and fixing issues. Honestly, it's not because I'm working there. It's because it's the feeling that I've got from other colleagues that are not Red Hatters when they are using this technology. But there are few bugs. Some extensions have bugs. You have to, it's a process of going on, and every project has passed by, has walked this path before. Also, there is no reflection. So no reflection goal means, we are losing some things. So AOP, we are losing AOP. So you have to decide, as always. And in some cases, there's no like a direct migration one-to-one from Spring to Quarkus. So for instance, these query DSL methods, okay, you need to follow another approach and create your own queries inside your methods. And these are references. Well, later on, I will share the presentation, so you will be able to go to these references. But I put here the Git repo of my project. Well, you will have all the changes, all the commits that I've done in the whole code. Okay, and the main page of Quarkus.io, and you can just click on them. And this is the important thing: is the mailing list of the Quarkus community. I also want to introduce the tutorials for Quarkus. They are open, free, 24/7, using Katacoda interactive tutorials. Anybody knows what it is, Katacoda? It has nothing to do with Red Hat, but Red Hat uses them. And it's a totally interactive tutorial system where you have on the left all the documentation, all the steps to follow in the tutorial, and on the right, you have the terminal, the containers, the local, the web console, in this case OpenShift or wherever. So it's like you can try and mess, and you will not mess with the local laptop. Okay, everything is there on the cloud, and you will find several tutorials for Spring Devs, Kafka, Hibernate, Prometheus, some. Yeah.
You can try this at the event today.
Yeah. Good point. If you go to the Red Hat booth, we have there lots of laptops to follow these tutorials, and you will get a T-shirt. Okay. Also, following this cheat sheet. So all the changes are gathered by my colleague Alex Soto, and you go here and you will find for each release all the changes and the code related to those changes. So it's a very important place to go and be updated. Also, this is the regular initializer that you have in Micronaut or you have in Spring, that you go to code.quarkus.io, you select which are the extensions that you want, and it will create a zip file that you just simply open, and you will have all the project. Yep. And now I want to show you the project that I'm working on Red Hat, that it is a tool, an open source tool that helps to statically analyze applications in order to suggest changes to migrate from A to B. Now it is used to migrate from Camel 2 to Camel 3, to several application servers to others, and soonish we will have rules to analyze your applications and suggest which are the changes that you have to introduce in order to migrate to Quarkus. So these are the few screens. You have all the changes categorized and with the story points that we think it will take you, so you can analyze if the change will take 5 days or 6 months. So this is something that is very useful in order to analyze before doing. And as I said, these are the real use cases from companies that have migrated to Quarkus. One of the important use cases that I want to mention is that Vodafone Greece replaced all their Spring Boot microservices to Quarkus. So you can have, here is the link that you can